The Last Week by Marcus Borg and John Crossan is a book that covers what the Gospels teach about Jesus' final days in Jerusalem. During Holy Week, we'll be sharing a summary of some of the events of each day. Here is Ed Stonick's summary of that final Thursday from the book of Mark. Thursday begins the most solemn part of the most sacred week of the Christian year. It is often called Maundy Thursday. The origin of this phrase goes all the way back to the events leading up to Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. While in Jerusalem to observe Passover, Jesus gathered his disciples and washed their feet, teaching the disciples, and all of us, to serve others. "A new commandment I give to you," Jesus said, "that you love one another, just as I have loved you." The Latin word for commandment is mandatum, mandate, which became Maundy in Thursday in English. That is why English-speaking countries call this day Maundy Thursday, and why churches may hold a foot-washing ceremony on this day of Holy Week. Communion is often taken at Maundy Thursday services to commemorate the foundation of the Holy Sacrament that occurred at Jesus' Last Supper. Maundy Thursday is a time of somber reflection as we contemplate the Holy Week events to come. The day is also a time to remember Jesus' new commandment and to consider how we might show Christ's love to the world. On Thursday, the events set in motion by Wednesday unfold. Holy Thursday is full of drama. In the evening, Jesus eats a final meal with his followers and prays for deliverance in Gethsemane. He is betrayed by Judas, denied by Peter, and abandoned by the rest of his disciples. Arrested in the darkness, he is then interrogated and condemned to death by the high priest and his council, the local collaborators with imperial authority. All this occurs before daybreak on Friday. Jesus first sends two disciples to arrange for the Passover meal. This is done in secrecy, as Jesus does not want Judas to know its precise location, so he cannot tell the authorities where Jesus is during the meal. The meal, the new Passover, matters very much, and Judas must not be allowed to interfere with its completion. There are three main elements to the Last Supper. They eat the Passover meal together. Jesus discloses that he knows he will be betrayed, and he invests the bread and wine with special meaning associated with his impending death. Shared meals were one of the most distinctive features of Jesus' public ministry. He often taught at meals. Some of his parables are about banquets, and he was often criticized by his opponents for whom he chose to eat with. Jesus' meal practice was about inclusion in a society with sharp social boundaries. During the meal, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, gave it to his disciples, and said, "Take, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, and all of them drank from it. He said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many." Mark 14:22-24. The language of body and blood points to a violent death and a blood sacrifice. The Last Supper is about bread for the world, God's justice against human injustice, a new Passover from bondage to liberation, and participation in the path that leads through death to a new life. As the meal ends, Jesus and the disciples sing a hymn and depart from the upstairs room. They leave and go to an area at the foot of the Mount of Olives known as Gethsemane. While here, Jesus tells his disciples that they will all become deserters. When Peter vows that he will not desert Jesus, Jesus assures them he will. Jesus then tells Peter, James, and John to stay awake while he prays, but they fall asleep 3 times and are reprimanded. Jesus prays for deliverance. He prays that this hour might pass from him and that this cup might be removed. Not surprisingly, he would rather not go through with it. Yet he hands himself over. Yet not what I want, but what you want. His prayer reflects a trusting in God in the midst of the most dire of circumstances. Finally, Judas arrives with a group of temple soldiers, and Jesus is arrested. The disciples flee. A crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests, scribes, and elders arrive to arrest Jesus, whom Judas identifies by a kiss. This group of temple police or soldiers apparently numbered about 600. A remarkable thing then happens. Jesus asked them, "Whom are you looking for?" They answered, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus replied, "I am he." When Jesus said this, all 600 soldiers fell to the ground. They acknowledged the presence of the sacred in Jesus and his lordship, but they arrest him anyway. Although the temple authorities who arrest Jesus are named as high priests, elders, and scribes, they did not represent the Jews. Rather, they were, as local collaborators with the Roman imperial authority, they were the oppressors of the vast majority of the Jewish people. Jesus' actual trial has 3 stages. The first has testimony against Jesus, but some gave false testimony, and their testimonies did not agree. In the second stage, the high priest interrogates Jesus directly, attempting to go for a confession, and the crucial interchange occurs. The high priest asks, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Verse 61. Jesus affirms this by responding, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power, and coming with the clouds of heaven." Verse 62. His reference to the Son of Man is significant. Jesus, the Son of Man, the human one, has already been given the kingdom of God. And even though it will be consummated in the future, it is already present on earth. That kingdom has yet to be revealed in power and glory, but it is already here in humility and service. Its presence is now known only to faith, but one day it will be revealed to sight. In the third stage, the high priest reacts to Jesus' words by tearing his clothes and asking the council for a decision. All of them condemned him as deserving death, and some begin to spit on him, blindfold him, and strike him. Jesus has been condemned to death and will now be handed over to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. The end and the beginning are near.